If you're hearing this in your Rolls-Royce, then Donald Trump's tax plan is for you.
You're rich as hell. We're going to give you tax cuts?
But for everyone else, there's Kamala Harris's plan.
Under my plan, more than 100 million Americans will get a tax cut.
Because that guy in the Ferrari doesn't need another break. But Kamala Harris knows you sure could use one. Paid for by FFPAC, ffpac.org. Not authorized by any candidate or candidates committee.
It's the left versus the right. In the right corner, it's heavyweight king Curtis Sliwa. In the left corner, it's Anthony Weiner. It's a 77 WABC debate. Heavyweight slugfest. On New York's news and talk station, 77 WABC.
Left versus right, Anthony Weiner on the left, Curtis Sliwa on the right. You know, the eye of the tiger. The other Anthony Sliwa. The apple doesn't fall far from the tree. For those of you who are tuning in a little late to this story, first of all, we want to get a little update to make sure Anthony and David Patterson are doing okay. But also a little bit of the blow-by-blow. If you have not already read it in the newspaper, there's still some facts that are coming out, so this is the place where you can hear it all. Last night, well, why did you tell us the story, Chris? About what time does this...
Wait a second. I thought you played the Rocky theme because of the Philadelphia Museum of Art, downtown Philly, the Rocky statue, the Philadelphia Phillies, Game 1, Mets not at home, away. I thought that's what you were focused on.
Look, we were going to get into this a little later in the program, whether you as a Yankee fan, who you root for. I, as a Met fan, I root for the Mets and anyone playing the Yankees.
I got to tell you.
I don't know if you have that same sense about your team.
Everybody knows I hate the Mets,
right.
But I was transfixed in that playoff game against the Atlanta Braves where they came back. Then they got blown back. But Diaz, the ace, gets rocked. And your guy, Carlos Mendoza, your Venezuelan manager, I wanted to stay with the Yankees and hope that they got rid of Mr. Analytics there, Aaron Boone.
I tell you, he's got a good shot at being manager of the year. But let me. So you root for the Yanks. You're going to be tuning in at 8:38 tonight. But when the Mets play, are you rooting against them? What's your mindset?
Oh, I love Philadelphia because I know Met fans hate the Philadelphia Phillies with a passion. But you pointed out something that I was not even aware of. Over the last 100 games, it's a 50-50 split. And Philly fans hate Met fans, and Met fans hate Philly fans. I think more than Met fans hate Yankee fans.
That's probably right. By the way, did you hear the other part of that statistic? Over the last 1,000 times the Mets and Yankees have played, the Mets and Phillies have played going back to July of 1966, 500.
Wow. And I go back to looking at the original Mets, my first game in the Polo Grounds. Richie Ashburn was playing center field, who had come over from the Philadelphia Phillies. I love Richie Ashburn, but that was it. My love affair with the Mets lasted all of one game in the old Polo Grounds, and then it was off across the Harlem River. You could walk across the bridge to Yankee Stadium, which was on the Bronx side.
Well, I mean, my first Mets experience was in the 1970s. No, I was following them before then, but that's when I really became a fan, the 1973. And they lost to Oakland. Now Oakland's not even going to be around anymore. So, I actually have a romantic memory of the Oakland A's. And my favorite player, as a scrawny kid who couldn't make the throw across the diamond, Felix Mian. That was my guy.
You know, my favorite Met was, even though I was not a Met fan, was Wayne Garrett, Carrot Top.
Yeah.
Him versus Vita Blue. That was great, because remember, Wayne Garrett batted left.
And threw right.
But threw right.
Yeah.
He was great at third base. Your other carrot top that came afterwards was, of course, Legrand
Orange, number 4.
What a hitter. Yeah. Rusty Staub. So I follow the Mets.
Yeah, well, you are a sports guy. I mean, you had to do this every day.
No, and I give props to Mets who were really good fundamental baseball. What I liked about this year's Mets against Atlanta, which was a very good team, they went the opposite way. They took the extra base, good old-fashioned baseball. Yes, Lindor hits that dramatic home run, but they didn't win by home runs. Now, my Yankees, unfortunately, it's boom or bust. We either hit 3 home runs.
They are not built for the postseason, man. I'm sorry.
We are not a punch-and-Judy team. The Mets can do it both ways, and as you saw in Milwaukee with Alonso, the polar bear, who everybody said, bye-bye, he's gone. No, I don't think he's going anywhere now.
Well, I want to tell you, I mean, he was due. The other thing about that Milwaukee series, every year Milwaukee, the bottom of the barrel in terms of their payroll. And they find these guys, these speedsters, these slap hitters, these utility guys turned into starters. And, you know, their shortstop is going to be free agent. He's already saying goodbye because we know Milwaukee is not going to be able to compete.
We all want Ohtani, L.A. Dodgers versus Aaron Judge, New York Yankees. The whole world wants that. Obviously, the Dodgers got to get through the San Diego Padres. But that's what the whole world wants. So, look, enjoy yourself. You know, have a chocolate pretzel in Philadelphia while you're there because it's over.
Well, here's the one thing I will say before we get into the politics. This is a political. I tell reporters the one thing you should ask all candidates for office to find out how authentic they are.
Yes.
Yankees or Mets and see what they say.
Yes.
And if they say, well, I like this one in the National League, that one, I say that guy's a phony. And every voter has a right to know before they go in whether they're voting for.
I do, though, think Eric Adams, who pretends to know about sports, you can tell he really doesn't, is a true Met fan because he mentioned Tommy Agee and Cleon Jones from the 69
right,
Miracle
that's true.
Mets.
That's true.
And Tommy Agee had a gin joint right there as you were on your way towards Northern Boulevard and the Mets. Very famous gin joint. Cleon Jones was always with a different woman in a different van. He was always getting caught. I mean, but both those guys.
You see,
were
but here's
great
what I
ball
don't
players.
understand. You remember in 1969, Lindsay was all over. He was in the dugout.
He knew
in the
nothing about
He knew
sports.
nothing. In the late 90s, Rudy Giuliani, he was there sitting there all the time.
Cognoscente.
And today, why isn't Mayor Adams wrapping himself? He should go to Alonso and get an endorsement.
Well, he did a thread last night at about 8 o'clock.
Oh, I missed it. I didn't see it.
Every response was negative. You can imagine. Don't jinx us. Stay away. It was like Shamu El Jefe Chris Christie was sitting in the box for Game 2 in Milwaukee. Did you see him right next to your owner?
Yeah.
He got up in the 8th inning and left for Game 3, and that's when Alonso came through. The curse of Shamu, Chris Christie was upon you.
Wasn't he also seen in a Dallas Cowboys owner's box?
Yes.
Was it against the Giants? Could that have
Against
been?
the Giants, but he was also in Philadelphia.
Yeah.
Remember, he was in the box of the guy who's now indicted, who was in charge of the New Jersey Democrats in southern New Jersey, owned the Philadelphia Inquirer, had the American and Israeli flag up in his box after October 6th. And the owner, Lurie, Jewish, threw him out, had him dragged out.
Yeah.
I mean, come on, man. What's wrong with your peeps?
Well, we're going to talk a little about October 7th, but give us a quick update. How's Anthony doing? I don't know if you've heard. Has they made an arrest? Has anyone been arrested? Well, catch us up a little bit for
All right,
those who are late to
last
this.
night at about 9 o'clock, I'm in here preparing for the best side of the other side of midnight, 12 midnight to 6, which I'll be doing tonight again. And Anthony's mother, Mary, who is now Mary Patterson, married to former Governor David Patterson, was telling me how Anthony and David had been attacked in the streets while they were walking their dog, who is a fluffy little yarn ball dog. And they do this every night. If it's not David and Anthony, it's Anthony and Mary. And they walk their little dog around the block. It's a circuitous route. Right off of 96 between 3rd and 2nd. It's the big mosque right on
And what time
3rd
again? Say the
9
time.
o'clock at night.
Got it. So the streets are not empty. There's people on the streets.
No, but generally,
yeah, it's
no
a little,
problems.
little sleepy.
So as they're getting out of the apartment house, as you know, David Patterson is almost blind. He's sight challenged. Anthony spots 3 teenagers going up a fire escape on the 2nd floor at a nearby tenement. And he tells them, because he's a guardian angel, he's going through the training, hey, what are you doing up there? Come on down. They come down, but they're now woofing with David Patterson and Anthony. You know, they're cursing at them, but they walk away. And they walk away and they go around the block. So David Patterson and Anthony continue to walk the dog, and they make a turn in the corner, and there's a McDonald's there where a lot of people hang out. Well,
This is on 2nd now?
This is on 2nd Avenue as you go north from 96th to 97th, and then they're going to make another left and just go around the block until the dog does what it has to do. Well, these three are inside the McDonald's with two adults, a man and a woman.
Did they see them? Did Anthony and David, but did Anthony see them inside there and kind of,
I don't
or
think
did they just kind of pop out?
I don't think he saw them.
Okay, all right.
Until they actually came out of the McDonald's and surrounded David and surrounded Anthony, and then immediately, began barking at him and then attacked him. And thankfully, my son has been trained by the Guardian Angels. He goes for his training. In fact, he was going for his purple belt next week at our martial arts academy in Washington Heights. And, it would have been very difficult for David Patterson to defend himself. All he can see is a shadow.
Right. And he's holding a dog and everything.
Right. So apparently Anthony stepped in front of him. They exchanged blows. Then Anthony told me, he said, boy, when I got hit by those adults, I really felt it. And that's when all of a sudden the police came. I guess somebody inside the McDonald's, which was crowded, called 911. And everybody fled. The cops have since posted the 5 pictures of the two adults.
There's some video on, and I think we have some on the ABC website, but there's also some at the New York Post website. So these two adults, did they just? What do you think? Do you think they were the parents of these kids? What do you think was going on there?
Nowadays,
or just older kids, maybe.
Nowadays, it used to be parents would pull the teenagers back.
Right.
Even if they weren't parents, they just adults. Hey, don't mind them. I got them. Now, sometimes they sick them. I have no idea. Obviously, Anthony has a difficult time talking. He's got 5 stitches in his lip. So I've kept the conversations to a minimal.
Right.
David Patterson was not injured as badly as Anthony, but he said in the newspaper his priority is watching the Met game today.
Yeah.
He's a big Met fan like you.
But he's not. For those of you who remember David Patterson when he was our governor, he's not a big guy. He's not a terrifically big guy. They're walking a dog. So tell me a little bit. That neighborhood is not what you would consider an unsafe neighborhood, though.
But the Upper East Side now has been the site of a lot of random attacks all over the Upper East Side. It seems that is the method of crime nowadays in New York. Unlike when I started the Guardian Angels, it was gangs, organized youth gangs. Now you almost never see that. What you see are these random attacks. Sometimes it's sane and sober individuals. Sometimes it's emotionally disturbed. Sometimes it's homeless. But they happen all different hours of the day and night. Unexpectedly, you can't even sometimes get a feel that it's going to happen. Like if you see a gang of 6 guys, and all of a sudden they're diddy-bopping towards you, they're lollygagging, and you say, oh, my God, how am I going to get through this? You feel that something's happening.
Yeah.
You don't feel this. And a lot of times you've seen from the videos, they hit you from behind. You've already passed them.
Yeah.
And they come up and they just strike you from behind, particularly elderly women in their 80s. There was this one comedian in Greenwich Village. She's the oldest comedian in the United States, 90, and she was assaulted from behind. Most of those are emotionally disturbed individuals who need to be in mental hospitals to care for their needs.
There are certain there is menacing groups of young thugs is not a new phenomenon, but so you must be very happy that crime is down under Mayor Adams.
Are you out of your mind?
I saw the press conference. He said crime is down.
Sure. Yeah, you keep thinking that, Anthony. Hey, your neighborhood, right, was a hotbed of criminal activity.
I know. Now you can't shake a dead cat without hitting a cop. They're all over the place.
That's the problem. And this is it. Forget Eric Adams for a second. You have 32,500 cops. You need at least 38,000. There's been a depletion in the ranks. Early retirements. Other cities come in. They start recruiting away. They never put back the $1 billion into the budget that de Blasio took out. Remember, de Blasio took out the $1 billion. Shea acknowledged it. He was the police commissioner. Yeah, that's right. And then when Eric Adams came in, he acted like he was going to replace some of it, if not all of it. Never did. And then the money started getting spent on the money.
Right. And then, just so our listeners understand, what very often police commissioners and mayors will do is they'll rely upon overtime because unlike a new officer, there's no additional health care costs, there's no additional pension costs. And when you do the 10-year estimate for the budget, if you have overtime one year, it doesn't automatically mean that the budget goes up the next year. You have to make a conscious decision. We are going to bolster. And then we had the other problem. You had September 11th is now a whole class of sergeants have now left, meaning the people that came in after September 11th, they have all gone since September 11th, or a lot of them have all started to age out themselves, or at the very least, they're no longer beat cops. And you probably, if you're a listener, you probably know if you look at a cop, they look like they're 15 years old because there's a lot of very young officers.
And forced overtime is never good.
It's not.
If cops want to work the overtime because they depend on overtime, that's fine. But you can see there's a morale problem. There's a lot of forced overtime, and you're just not as good. It's like, remember when they would have interns in hospitals? They'd be on a binge like 36 hours. They'd be doing speed, mescaline, just to stay awake. And how many problems took place? If a police officer is not fully rested, remember, they're out there, they're getting abused every day. There's shouts, there's hollering. They want to work an 8-hour shift.
Well, I mean, let's be honest about this. A lot of officers rely upon overtime, and very often they rely upon overtime in the years when they're about to retire because the higher pay that they get because of overtime counts as their pension baseline. So there's a lot of reasons why officers don't mind overtime. But as citizens and as voters, it is not a good structural way to do things.
And it puts stress on the family at home. You're not at home. You're not with either your wife or your husband or your partner, the kids. You're not with you. It's just, if you want to work the overtime, fine, if the overtime is available. But forced overtime creates morale problems.
Well, and the other thing that is we are still in the post-2020 era that cops do feel, when you talk to them calmly and you don't, get their name and you just say, well, they still feel that they're at the short end of a lot of the conversation. Look, the conversation around policing seems to never change in this city, in this country.
My conversation with them, because I see them everywhere, because I'm at these public events where they have a lot of cops assigned. I say, who's your police commissioner? They don't even know.
Yeah.
This new guy, I don't even know his name.
Yeah.
You understand?
I know, but the beat cop, he cares about his sector sergeant. He cares about his XO and his CO.
Still,
I guess so.
You got nobody at the top. And right now there are mixed messages. It's a house in disorder. And Eric Adams is so immersed in all of his own personal problems dealing with the federal government that he was the titular police chief. He was calling the shots with Phil Banks. That's changed. He can't do that anymore. He doesn't have the time to do that. He's too busy going from church to church, doing the holy roller
But before we
routine.
get into the politics behind it, just on the police thing. So if you were the police, if you were the mayor, you would add, another 5,000-6,000 police officers?
No,
probably.
what I would do is I would go to places like Columbia and NYU that has the massive endowments and say, hey, you're going to have to start kicking in some of that money. We're doing policing in your area because you have these demonstrations.
Right, that's how you'd pay for it. But you want another 5,000 or so cops on the beat.
Easily.
Yeah. I mean, I think that's right. I think I believe that as well. I think the other thing, the problem with our conversation around policing is just to have a conversation about hiring new cops. A lot of people visibly say no. And I would argue that doesn't mean you don't change the way you recruit them. You change the way you train them, change the way you discipline. You can make changes, but the sheer number of cops. In my neighborhood on 14th Street in the East Village, when we had a spate of crimes and a couple of murders, they flooded the area with police officers. There are some things that you just need more officers for. That's the bottom line.
That's the problem, because I'm all over the city, Anthony, and see it's either feast or famine. So if there's a crime splurge and it's making the news, they flood the area with cops. But you don't just manufacture cops. You're taking them from precincts. You're putting them into that area, which then means you're going to have a problem back in those precincts. You just don't have enough cops.
Well, then you have other problems. Other problems, for example, it seems like today cops are spending more time on EDPs than at other times because emotionally disturbed people, because in the post-COVID years, a lot of these people that got turned out of places during COVID are still out there on the street.
Correct.
And police officers, you might say they shouldn't be the ones that respond to them, but that is who we have. I think that's one of the things. If I was Eric Adams, I would have done a lot more to try to reform that as a former police officer. So let's try to figure out a way we don't have police officers going to every
they
every
all
EDP.
said that. De Blasio said it. He said it, but they never do it. Now, the person who's hovering over like a political vulture, like a political zombie, is Andrew Cuomo, right? Former governor. When he came into office, there were 30,000 state beds. Most of these are state facilities, the psychiatric facilities.
These are mental hospitals.
Right. There are now 3,000 beds.
Wait a minute, 30,000 to 3?
He cut the budget every year.
And that wasn't a COVID thing that we had to get people out of these congregate
COVID.
settings?
This is before COVID. So here is a problem. You have these facilities. You have these hospitals. You go to Creedmoor, where we now have tents for the migrants.
Right.
I've been in Creedmoor, empty. Whole wards empty. Now, do they need to be rehabbed? Do you need to make sure you have the nurses and
you don't
doctors?
want to go back to the Willowbrook era
No,
where
of
you're
course.
just
You don't want
warehousing
that
people.
institution. But it's a sin, Anthony, to see these men and women incapable of controlling their mental and physical faculties.
Well, here's the other problem, and we have to go to a break, but here's the other problem. We have to update the laws so that we can institutionalize these people against their will. The problem is the laws are so in the direction of the civil rights and civil liberties of these people that the community, these people who can't care for themselves and can't speak for themselves, there's a gap in the law. Well, who gets to advocate on their behalf? And so I think there should be a very strong judicial system to make sure that no one's being rounded up against their will in the truest sense. But if someone can't take care of themselves, and that's what's going on in my neighborhood. You ask every resident of my neighborhood, we know the 5 or 6 EDPs in our neighborhood who are on the streets. We know their names. We know where we're going to find them. We know somebody to steer clear of. Most of them are doing no one any harm per se, but they are a menacing
most of them will tell you, as you know, I've had personal conversations. I know many of them that they talk directly to God. We have a mayor who might be a little schizo to it because he tells us he talks to God. Apparently, God has made a mistake in choosing him as the chosen one.
Let's see. It might just be the long and winding road. You never know God's plan. This is Left versus Right. Anthony Weiner on the left, Curtis Sliwa on the right. We'll be right back.
It's the left versus the right. In the right corner, it's heavyweight king Curtis Sliwa. In the left corner, it's Anthony Weiner.
By the way, Anthony Weiner, do you realize this was the theme song for the greatest talk show host of all time, Bob Grant, the king of talk radio, who his base was right here at WABC in the afternoons. This was his theme song. You're conjuring up so many memories.
Yeah.
But it's almost like you're sending subliminal messages to your enemies, the Philadelphia Phillies fans, because they hear this. And this serenades them. Rocky there, right by the Museum of Art.
But one thing that never happened in Bob Grant's days, we have never had a sitting mayor indicted. Even when you go back to Jimmy Walker, he was never actually indicted. They tried to throw him out. He wound up just getting on a boat and leaving town.
And, he came back 10 years later, and he was a talk show host at WOR.
I know. And, you know what he started out being? He was a songwriter on Broadway.
Yep.
He was a Broadway. As a matter of fact, when he did go and just get on a boat and say, see you later, it wasn't with his wife. It was with his girlfriend, a flapper that he had met. He was a crazy story. One of my favorite stories.
If you want to see a great movie, you don't think of Bob Hope as a dramatic actor. He played Jimmy Walker.
Yeah, Bo James, I think the movie was called.
It was great.
Yeah.
He captured everything about Jimmy Walker, who the modern-day Jimmy Walker is definitely Eric Adams.
Well, except the modern Jimmy Walker, I got to tell you, he this was during Prohibition. He led something called the Beer Parade down Fifth Avenue. He was a very colorful guy. And he also, as an old Tammany Hall guy, took care of the community. If he would have been forced to, if they didn't force him out, he might have won re-election despite all of that.
How it all happened? A murder of a woman in a park in the Bronx led to his demise. He had nothing to do with it. But they started investigating that, and it led to people that were working with him.
Correct.
And eventually he was forced out.
And also all the mob that existed at the time, they call the Tenderloin District the Tenderloin District because if you were a cop and you wanted to eat hamburger, you go one part of Manhattan, but if you wanted to eat tenderloin, you worked there because that's where all the prostitutes were and everything else. What happened was you had the collision of all of the corruption that happened in the city. You know what? Maybe it is more of an analogy than we might think.
Well, first off, he had 50 suits in his closet, Jimmy Walker. Now, they didn't cost $5,000 then like Eric Adams. Right. But it's the same thing, very dapper, very elegant, always coiffured, always the best places by day and the speakeasies at night, which you had to have some coin to go to. He didn't just go to any flop houses.
Right.
So he lived that life. He was the nightlife mayor. I think how Eric Adams hurt himself right out of the box. Remember when Saturday Night Live did that portrayal?
Yeah.
And I would have, at that point, said to Eric, no. Look at this guy. He's dressed like a pimp up on that stage. You know, this is not you. This is not how you got elected. Nobody elected you because you said you would be the nightlife mayor. But he liked that swagger.
And my theory about that is that New Yorkers are totally fine with a colorful character being their mayor.
As long as they do the job.
Correct. As part of like the cherry on top of the thing. You can't be that and not, like in a way, it's a little bit like in sports. If you're going to be a big swaggering guy and everything else, you better get hits.
86 Mets,
right?
Perfect. They were doing cocaine, everything.
They'll be and what happened was the nomiker, the slick identity continued even when things started to go south in the city. But let's game it out.
There's one positive from all these indictments. He does not go out at night anymore. He's in Gracie Mansion. Remember, he would never stay in Gracie Mansion. His excuse at first was it's haunted.
Well, you want to know another difference is that he has his regular addressing the media thing. And he used to do this thing every week where he'd have a line of commissioners, deputy commissioners, and so whenever questions got a little bit choppy, he'd point to someone else. And they were getting...
And his theme song coming in was Jay-Z.
Yeah, exactly.
He doesn't have that anymore. New York State now it's straight
So
straight
now the last one, and I think, look, there are a lot of signs that he's getting the message. One by one, the troublesome commissioners, the troublesome deputy mayors, the troublesome police officers are starting to leave. They're resigning. Now, I think that what he should have done is done it all at once to kind of save. But the other thing, it seems like that damage is done. A poll came out this week that showed him at like something like 70% thought that he should quit. Not even that I won't vote for him. He should quit. He should not. He should pack his bags.
Never
right
before
now.
happened.
That's a really tough number to come back from. The rule of thumb, generally speaking, in politics, people who don't know you can persuade to like you. People who've decided that they don't like you, it's very, very hard to persuade you. One of the reasons Kamala Harris took off is that, frankly, a lot of people didn't know her all that well. They got to know her, they liked her, etc. So let me ask you what happens here. For our listeners who probably they're much more sophisticated than most, you probably know that if the mayor resigns at this moment, the public advocate, a guy named Jumaane Williams, would take office, but only for 2 months. Then there has to be a special election called no Democrat, Republican by your name. Anyone can get in. The obstacles to getting in are very low. You don't just have like a couple hundred signatures or whatever, a couple of thousand signatures. It's generally conventional wisdom that at that point, Andrew Cuomo gets in. This guy Lander, who's already announced he's running for mayor, he probably gets in. The public advocate probably says, I'm holding the job for 2 months. I'll probably be in. Do you get in?
There's 50 people that'll get in. Remember Schwarzenegger, how he won that special election against Gray Davis? Gray Davis could not get more than 50%, so it went right to the nonpartisan election. There were 50 people in that election.
Yeah, I mean, it'll be kind of like that, but what always happens is the serious ones become the ones. And then
right, but all you got to do is get 3,257.
Curtis
of course,
Sliwa,
I'm in it to win it.
You are.
I'm in it to win it.
You wind up getting in. Okay. Now, so game it out a little bit. Do you think, let's start with the big question, and we'll go to the decision tree. Do you think that Eric Adams, who just got the vote of confidence from the speaker in waiting, Hakeem Jeffries, he's got about 30 politicians in the neighborhood who have said they want him to drop. The New York Times has said they want him to drop. Do you think that he resigns his seat?
No. And I've encouraged him not to resign because for the very reason I don't want to see Jumaane Williams in the mayoral seat 1 day, 1 week, 1 month. Look, he's got allies in the city council. They can put through a lot of legislation in what could be anywhere from 60 to 90 days. And as you know, this is not like when the president comes and he issues an executive order and he undoes everything that the previous president. No, you're not going to be able to rescind these laws. These laws are going to be in place for a long time. And I think because he has allies on the far left who love Jumaane and they love him, remember, as public advocate, he has sat over. You serve. He's been with them. That's extraordinarily dangerous. Now, also, Jay Jacobs, who's the state chairman, who is there only because of Kathy Hochul, because remember, he was a Cuomo-sexual. He loved Cuomo. Right. Then he denounced him. He said, we'll run Tish James. And I noticed, okay, all right, Tish James is going to say no, thank you. It's I love being attorney general. Nothing. If Tish James were thrown into that mix, now the advantage is Tish James. I know, but hold on a
second. You're getting ahead of it. So you don't think that he resigns? No. Even though there's some argument that might take the heat a little bit off him. All right, well, let me ask. I mean, by the way, just a little bit of a caveat about your idea that they're going to be able to rush ahead and pass a lot of legislation. A lot of our listeners don't realize this. This year on the ballot in November is going to be one of the ballot items is going to be this idea that any time that you pass a law in the city council, you have to let it age for at least 30 days. It is not going to – they're not going to do that kind of crazy stuff, in my view. There'll be a caretaker. They might do a couple of things. They're not going to – 60 days seems like a lot. You can do a lot of damage. I don't think you can do that much damage. But let me just ask you this question. If you don't think that he runs, do you think instead he does a Joe Biden and announces, I won't be running for re-election to take some of the attention and the heat off
That
of him?
may be part of a deal he makes with the U.S. Attorney Southern District. Look, we've all seen Damian Williams. He's the lead prosecutor. He's got notches on his belt. He reminds you of Rudy Giuliani in some ways and Preet Bharara in other ways. You'll never remember who the other U.S. attorneys of the Southern District were because they didn't go for the high-profile cases. These three guys do, and he has victories. So I can easily see at some point Eric Adams is sat down, and there are two ways he could go if obviously the walls have closed in and there's no escape. A universal plea, which is done in the mob, that means, okay, I'll take a plea, and you'll let my people go. My people go, because you don't really want them. You want me. I know I'm the target, which he is. All these other people are just ancillary. Or you make an agreement in which I serve out my term, but I don't run for re-election.
Yeah, I mean, generally, let me just say about the first thing. I don't think they're going to be willing to make a universal plea in this case because the four investigations seem to be very distinct from one another, meaning I think they are not going to have an Adams element of all of them. I think they're going to be other people.
But the card, the joker in the deck, if Donald Trump is elected president.
You're jumping ahead. Let's wait on that. Let's wait on that. But that okay. And the other reason, I'm not crazy about the theory is that usually when U.S. attorneys, if they want to get your head on they want to get your scalpel, what they say is we want you to resign. We want you to quit. They very rarely say we'll let you finish out your term.
That's what they did to Elliot Spitzer.
Well, Elliot had already. That's one of the reasons they didn't prosecute him. They said you've already paid enough of a price.
Right.
So all right. So you think he takes a handicap it for us? What do you think the odds are that he basically? Because listen. After this presidential election, when they start polling this in January, February, whatever it is, he has to file petitions go out on the street the end of February.
Right.
He is going to be at 25, 30% and probably losing to 4 or 5 people in a poll, probably even losing to you.
Right, but you can always have a committee that chooses a replacement for you on the top of the petition. Every petition.
You think he goes through the act of running up until
he gets a deal that he's happy with?
I don't know.
Now, you got this guy, nobody gives him attention, Scott Hagan. He is the sharpest of the sharpshooters in the U.S. Attorney's Office. He is the lead prosecutor in this case.
He's an assistant U.S. attorney?
Man, he is good.
All right, well, you can tell us about him when we get back. We have to go to a break. It's Left versus Right. Anthony Weiner on the left, Dominic Carter on the right. We'll see you after this quick break.
It's the left versus the right. In the right corner, it's heavyweight king Curtis Sliwa. In the left corner, it's Anthony Weiner. It's a 77 WABC debate. Heavyweight slugfest.
Everybody was kung fu fighting. Those kids were fast as lightning.
So proud of my son Anthony. Chip off the old block, using his martial arts training to fend off those 5 thugs. It's now called a gang attack by the NYPD. The suspects are wanted. And also helping David Patterson, who, as you know, is sight challenged. So he would have a limited ability to defend himself.
Yeah, and there's a great picture in today's New York Post of you and Anthony when he was somewhat younger. He spends a lot of time around here, you and I. He is one of the nicest, decent, most kind, and he's well-trained. And for those of you who have not seen him in a kilt, he also plays the bagpipes.
And he was going for his purple belt test this coming week at the Guardian Angel Martial Arts Academy because he trains. He didn't just get it through, nepotism. He earned every step of the way in becoming a Guardian Angel.
So when we left off the conversation, you were saying a name of someone, an assistant U.S. attorney. And by the way, the U.S. attorneys, and one of the problems is U.S. attorneys, no one knows who these people are. You told us a little bit about the present U.S. attorney. Usually, they don't get voted by anyone. We rely on them to use their judgment. It is clear, based on everything that we saw, they really had it in for Adams. There are ways to make things easy. There are ways to make things hard. When I had my run-ins with the Southern District, they said, we'd like your iPad and your phone. I said, sure, come on over. And they made sure to do it at a time that Jordan wasn't around and everything else.
Sure.
So there are different ways these things go. These are human beings, law enforcement. They're trying to just get their job done. But these guys, they took Adams' phones when he intentionally didn't have it because apparently he was tipped off. So they are doing a lot to really stick it to the...
he brought his personal phone,
his phone,
iPhone, the next day, and they said, can you give us the code so we can open it up? He goes, well, yesterday I was so worried about people getting into my phone and violating it that I changed my code, my entry code, and I forgot what the code is.
Right. That, by the way, a perfect example of two things. One, he's too clever by half. He could have said, my lawyer says I don't need to give it to you. If you get a court order, I'll gladly give it to you. Because you're not required to. If anyone out there is ever arrested and the cop says, I want to look at your phone, you don't have to give them the password. And by the way, that's why I don't have Face ID on mine. I don't get to hold it up to my face. But then the other thing about it is he didn't have his personal phone with him, the one that he texts back and forth with Sid on.
He knew.
He knew it was coming.
Who had the most important cell phone that never surfaced in investigation? 3 people went to jail because of it. Bridgegate. The phone of Shamu El Jefe Chris Christie would have answered the question. You know who had it in his safe? His private attorney at that time, who had been his assistant prosecutor when he was U.S. attorney
Why wasn't
for
it
Newark.
Subpoenaed?
Well, guess what? Nobody knew that Ray had it in his safe. Christie said, I lost it. Well,
that's you can't lie like that.
Remember, and then Ray gets nominated to replace Comey.
I forgot the story.
Oh, Ray. And then remember, Randy Mastro was hired by Chris Christie, came over, did a press conference exonerating Chris Christie, and the media said, weren't you hired by Chris Christie?
Exactly.
You're not an independent
wait. All right, so go back. You were telling this guy named Hogan, whose name I had not heard. What does he have? What does he have to do? Hagen. What does he have to do with this?
Well, first off, he is experienced prosecutor. He clerked for Roberts, the United States Supreme Court, and then Kavanaugh. He served special forces in Afghanistan. The guy is definitely relentless, and he's aided by another assistant prosecutor named Celia, and they've been together as a team for quite some time. I've been with U.S. attorneys, as you have. I had 4 times an opportunity to put John Gotti Jr. away for the kidnap and attempted murder of me. 4 times up, 4 times he escaped on technicalities. I know good attorneys there, and I know bad attorneys. This guy is relentless. He is not going to let Team Adams squirm away. Now, remember, Team Adams, meaning Eric Adams, hired at great expense this celebrity lawyer who's a hired gun, Alex Spiro.
Right.
He represents rappers, people in Hollywood. He's a bull. He's a pit bull. This guy's not going to relent. The evidence is overwhelming.
But the guys,
it's overwhelming.
The Spiro types, there are 2 kinds of lawyers you want in this case. The outside guy, the guy that stands on the steps of the courthouse with a nice tie and does a nice presentation. And then the in-house guys, the guys that know someone at the U.S. attorney who tries to get the deal going on.
He has that, too. Remember, McGuire, who was his counsel.
I was going to ask about him. So Brendan McGuire, a name that most New Yorkers don't know. He was a former Southern District of New York prosecutor. He comes as the mayor's Office of Criminal Justice. And a very solid citizen.
Yeah.
Everyone who I know spoke to him. He's related to former police commissioner McGuire,
who was a lawyer cop. He never walked a beat. He was a police commissioner for Koch.
Right. So Brendan McGuire, in what might have been a tell, a year ago left his seat.
Him and another person, and they are operating together in a law firm, and then they were then hired by Adams.
Yeah, but I'm saying that they left the administration a while ago in what at the time people kind of scratched their heads a little bit about. Is like, this is a time, law enforcement, everything else. Like, he didn't say anything bad about the mayor. And then I don't know, is he also one of the mayor's lawyers?
Now, yes.
He is.
Yeah, but remember, there's two sets of lawyers, as you pointed out. Right. There's the pit bull, and then there are the guys behind the scene who know everyone at the U.S. Attorney's Office because they work with them. Now, this investigation, ladies and gentlemen, I know a lot of you are MAGA people, you're Republicans, you want to believe it's all based on the fact that Eric Adams stood up to Biden, Harris, about the migrants coming in. Wrong. If you look at the documentation, this investigation started during the Democratic primary in 2021 and bled over into his general election victory over me.
Well, it actually goes further back than that. Some of the allegations from 2016.
Right, but the core of it, with the straw donors, with all the things that could put them away. There's nothing sexy about that, straw donors, right? People don't know what that is. But naturally, flights, champagne, Robin Leach, the lifetime of the rich and the famous, taking Turkish Airways. You remember Morgan Freeman doing those commercials for Turkish Airlines? You had Kobe Bryant. You had Messi. Turkish Airways was the biggest airline at that time.
Look, you have every reason to exaggerate this. I'll say it the other way. Politicians, famous people get bumped up all the time. There's no additional cost to the airline. And when you and I were talking about this for the last 2 months on the radio, we said there's got to be something more here. There's got to be something more here. Upgrades on flights? Come on. That is what we're taking down a mayor for? And the straw donor thing is a little bit more serious, but with that, you have a grand total of one person who's responsible for all of the testimony on this, and she was fired for not being good at her job. And the quid pro quo was a fire inspection? Oh, my. And he wasn't even the mayor at the time? Listen, I'm not saying these things individually are not potentially crimes. I'm just saying that if you're a prosecutor, I would expect if you're going to bring down a mayor, it should be something a little weightier than that.
They are going to be superseding indictments.
Okay, so you admit this is wafer thin.
This was glitz. This is to get your beak interested because people go for the glitz. They don't have the gold bars the Menendez had or the cash in his customized jackets. No, but you're doing the whole
thing about who advertised for Turkish Air and how long he was doing it. Look, these three things are not great. Taking free stuff without reporting it, not a good thing. Straw donors, not a good thing. Jumping ahead of the line in a fire inspection, not a good thing.
Look how many phones they've taken. Some of these people are going to become cooperators.
Hey. If you're going to tell me there's a lot more coming, they raided Gracie Mansion the day they announced the indictment.
Well, that's because of the phone situation.
How's that for a kick in the teeth? And we'll be right back.
It's the left versus the right in the right corner. It's heavyweight king Curtis Sliwa in the left corner. It's Anthony Weiner.
Oh, we're approaching that moment when then President Donald Trump was on that stage, right in that cow patch. There were 50,000 MAGA people in Butler. It had been delayed an hour. It was supposed to have started at 5 on July 13th. It was pushed back to 6. By 6:05, he was on the stage. 8 shots fired from the nearby warehouse by Sniper Boy with the AR-15. Pierced his ear. If he hadn't moved his head, he might well have been hit and may not be here as of now. And boy, remember, Anthony, I predicted, don't be surprised when the ashes of the Sniper Boy turn up in an urn. Everybody here laughed at me. And what happened? He was brought to a crematorium.
Are you one of these conspiracy guys?
Conspiracy? It's so obvious what happened. Even Lee Harvey Oswald was buried.
All right, play it out for me. It's so funny. I hear these conspiracy theories that involved around law enforcement, dozens of members of law enforcement. I don't know if you pay attention to the callers to our shows here.
Of course it.
These law enforcement guys are all conservative guys. There aren't about a bunch of AOC liberals walking the beat in this town, and they're all going to conspire against Donald Trump.
Isn't Cheney a conservative, right? Dick Cheney. Aren't the Bushes conservatives?
I'm talking
There's
about
a whole wing of conservatives who hate Trump.
And here's the other thing about conspiracies: you think 10 Secret Service guys can conspire to do anything?
Whatever could go wrong that day did go wrong. Right?
That is no doubt the truth.
How did that happen?
Hey, stuff happens. I always tell people when they say there's a conspiracy, coincidence is a much more likely thing. I've been inside government. These guys can't plan anything.
So then when the director of Secret Service tells them in a hearing that she finally goes to, I didn't go there. I didn't talk to anybody who was involved in leadership on the ground. Say, well, what were you doing?
Hold on. She did say, I got a full report. And she also said, I'll see you later. I'm quitting.
Would have been okay if she actually went there a few days later, looked at it, talked to the people who were in charge.
In the meantime, what about your guy, Donald Trump? He stands on the stage at the convention and says, I'm only going to tell this story once about what happened there. Yes. He will not stop talking about this. He will not stop talking. And by the way,
it has not moved not one inch in the polls. It is still neck and neck. Although, look at the history, and you are a good historian of these elections. Against Hillary, he was 6 points back on Election Day, 7 points back on Joe Biden. When it's neck and neck, you have to defer to Trump because a lot of the Trumpers will not tell the pollsters.
I don't know, but the problem is that now the pollsters are always fighting the last war. They've adjusted now, and the 2022 polls were dead on. Now, you're right. When Donald Trump is on the ballot, it is a little bit different. But the 2022 vote was dead on, and I want to tell you...
You know what's different? Because I talk to Republican groups all the time. They're being told early voting. Get there the first day of early voting. Ballots, mail-in ballots... any conceivable...
Yeah, but you know who's not doing that? Donald Trump is still pissing on mail-in ballots and still pissing on early voting and still complaining about it.
And also, you vote down the line. Many times I would go to a polling location and all the people would do is vote for Donald Trump and leave.
Listen, there's another way to interpret these numbers. 2016, he won. He didn't win the popular vote, but he won. 2017, the Republicans got blown out. 2018, the Republicans got blown out. 2020, the Republicans got blown out. 2022, the Republicans got blown out. And here we are. That this form of republicanism, and I know that you have a tense relationship with the MAGA wing of the party.
Of course.
This way that the Republican Party has evolved into a pro-tariff, we don't care about the Constitution and we don't support our foreign adversary, our foreign allies. This Republican Party is not a winning coalition when Donald Trump is not on the ticket. And there's going to be, he could win. I got to tell you, it's a flat-footed tie right now.
Again, acts of God sometimes impact elections. Superstorm Sandy, it was neck and neck between Romney and Obama. And then Obama came to the rescue. El Jefe, Chris Christie embraced him, and that was it for Romney.
Yeah, but in 2012, the polls were moving. We have no movement.
I know.
We have an incontinent president who is basically, Harris is doing much better, right? 2.5 points better. That's it. Than a guy who was virtually dead on stage.
Cadaver and formaldehyde. But you've been slow on this hurricane recovery. You've been slow.
I tell you who doesn't say that. The governor of North Carolina doesn't say it. Republican. The governor of Georgia doesn't say it. I mean, all those guys say I can't thank the Democrat.
Well, because
they
want money. They want money from FEMA.
I understand. So, who are you going to blame? I mean, who are you going to believe? The governors who can say. The governor of Georgia stood with Trump, which was a crazy enough story to begin with, and says, "Listen, I have no complaints about how the aid has come." The guy called me even before the storm hit.
But don't you find it very odd that on Air Force One, when President Joe Biden was going to survey damage in South Carolina and Florida, Mayorkas, head of the DHS, said, "We've run out of money with FEMA. We need more money."
Yeah, you're exactly right.
Because of $1.5 billion we've used for migrants. That angers the hell out of the population.
First of all, he didn't say that. He said, we've got enough money to get through this because, if you recall, the Republicans, your party, refused to pass the aid bill to be fully funded. They say, we're only going to get you through December. And by the way, you know who did actually move emergency response to build the wall? Your president, Donald Trump, did that. This is a complete BS story. If the Republicans in Congress would appropriate money for FEMA, it would be there. And you know when they also didn't do it? Hurricane Sandy. They didn't do it then either.
By the way, the visuals are bad. The visuals are bad for the Democrats. They were slow in getting to the locations. Harris is there today, right? Today is her first day there.
Wait, hold on a second. We all know the president doesn't go to that site. There was the same with September 11th. The president came a couple of days later, and there was a big conversation. You do more harm than good. What did your guy do? Your guy shows up there behind bricks and throws paper towels at people and sets up a GoFundMe.
Like
You're
East
a billionaire.
Palestine.
You're a billionaire. Write a check, you greedy bastard.
Palestine. What happened? There was Trump. Where was Biden? Where was Buttigieg? They never came.
You know what? They never came because they had to be back in Washington fixing the regulations that Mr. Deregulation Trump did around trains.
Yeah, you keep thinking that.
And he sets up a GoFundMe campaign. I thought you're a billionaire. Your GoFundMe campaign.
Let me tell you something, Anthony. You're losing on this issue. Back to back, belly to belly. The migrant issue. And obviously, hurricane relief. I'm telling you,
it's
polls,
a good thing we added 254,000 jobs in September.
Nobody's paying attention to that.
Oh, are you kidding me? The economy, Wall Street is doing bonkers right now.
Nobody's paying attention to that,
I got to tell you something. You know how many people in our audience have a 401k? They're paying attention.
I'm sure they're going to. I'm going to vote for Harris.
Bidenomics, baby. Don't wake them to tell them, but Bidenomics.
You keep thinking that. Get ready for President Trump and Vice President Harris.
It happening.
The coach,
come on.
Can the coach go back and maybe become the coach of the University of Minnesota, the Gophers? What do you think?
He's a knucklehead.
What can we do for that guy? You got to admit.
What about your guy Vance? Just say this guy
was
lost.
A smooth operator in that debate.
And the eyeliner? What's that about?
Hey, look, remember we had an attorney general here in New York State who thought he was on his way to becoming the U.S. attorney general for Hillary if she had won.
Schneiderman.
Right. He used, what was that, eyeliner.
Yeah. That's the thing. You and I don't need it.
It enhances your eyebrows.
You and I don't need it. We're naturally good looking. Listen, give our best to Anthony. If you speak to David Patterson, give our best to him. You're on the air tonight?
Tonight from the best side of the other side of midnight, 12 midnight to 6 in the morning. And we're going to go into what Donald Trump had to say in Butler today. He's expected on the stage momentarily.
Meet
His
the Mets
return.
to bring us out.
Meet the Mets. Meet the Mets. Step right up and greet